We are all in the middle of a pandemic right now, which means that we are all affected one way or the other by COVID-19. Unfortunately, many Americans have been affected more so than others. Many Americans have lost their jobs and as a result have been unable to pay their bills or their rent. In Texas, we face similar challenges. An increasing unemployment rate with a long line of people waiting to receive unemployment benefits. Today, I would like to discuss the impacts COVID-19 has had on our communities and the ways in which we can help mitigate those effects. Let's start by discussing the impacts COVID-19 has had on our communities. I'd like to tell you a story that was featured on an article on BBC.com by Helier Chung, published on April 23, 2020. Just a couple hundred miles south of us, in Houston, a man named Stanley Chen, a technician at a car dealership, was furloughed after 30 years on the job. Similarly, his wife was forced out of business because of COVID-19. This is just one example of the tens of millions of jobs lost since the pandemic began. Many Americans have had to decide between health and safety and going to work, even if they weren't laid off or furloughed. Many Americans have had to decide between buying groceries or paying their bills. And many more have had to wait in long lines just to receive unemployment benefits. And even if they receive those benefits and other forms of aid like stimulus checks, it still isn't enough to help them gain access to food. According to an article on NBCnews.com by Lucy Bailey, published on May 21, 2020, nearly 40 million jobs have been lost nationwide since the pandemic began. In Texas, we face a 12.8% unemployment rate, with more than 1 million jobs lost since the pandemic began, according to an article by Don DeFurio on DallasNews.com, published on May 22, 2020. Food banks are struggling to keep up with the increasing demand, especially from those that are coming to the food bank for the first time. According to a video published on NBC's Today Show, approximately 70% of people that registered at the San Antonio Food Bank were people that registered for the first time. People have had to wait in long lines just to receive food. And a typical week at the San Antonio Food Bank has went from 60,000 families a week to double, 120,000 families a week since the pandemic began. These statistics show that the pandemic has not only affected the needy, but has affected many others and caused them to have a need to go to the food bank when they would otherwise have enough money to support themselves. Although these statistics paint a dire picture, there are ways that we, as the more fortunate, can help out these people. We can start by donating to food banks and other community response funds, like the North Texas Community Response Fund. The North Texas Community Response Fund was established by the Communities Foundation of Texas to help those impacted by COVID-19, especially here in North Texas. This includes access to food, healthcare, and support for other organizations that help vulnerable populations. The North Texas Community Response Fund is an especially important one because it supports other organizations that help to provide essential needs to people that are affected by COVID-19. But they cannot do it without the donations from people like you. When you donate to the North Texas Community Response Fund, you're not only helping individuals, but you're helping families and entire communities across North Texas. You're helping them gain access to food that they would otherwise struggle to attain. You're helping them gain access to health care that they would otherwise struggle to attain. And you're helping them gain access to shelter that they would otherwise struggle to attain. But if you ignore the needs of not people in some place you don't know, but your own community, you're ignoring the needs of many others who are not as fortunate as you are. You're ignoring the needs of children who have no other option than to starve because of the meals that they rely on at school have been cut off. Without the support of donations, food banks will continue to struggle to provide for those in need. So, who will you be? The person who wants to make a difference in his community, or the person that wants to ignore the reality around him? Please keep in mind that there are those who are not as fortunate as you, and help them gain access to essential needs and survive through the pandemic. Just log on to cftexas.org/COVID-19, choose the North Texas Community Response Fund, then select a donation amount and enter your payment information. By choosing to donate to the North Texas Community Response Fund, you're helping many others who are not as fortunate as you are gain access to essential human needs and survive through the pandemic. I'd like to leave you with a quote from Jack Dioff. Hunger is not an issue of charity, it is an issue of justice. Thank you.